Hi everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm not involved in early years, for the last 8 or 9 years, but I used to run my own preschool, and it's just been lovely being back in this environment again. However, today I'm here talking as a lesbian mom of 3 children. And what I suppose I find really interesting about having to say I'm a lesbian mom is that I came out late in life. I was married in a heterosexual marriage for 10 years, had 3 children with my husband. And all the things you take for granted being a heterosexual, when I came out, suddenly our whole worlds, and mine and my 3 children, had suddenly changed because of my sexual identity. And at times that still baffles me, that sexual orientation has such an impact on not only the person who identifies as lesbian or gay, but their family, their children, their parents. So suddenly I found myself in a minority group, and all that goes with being in a minority group, so discrimination, exclusion. When I first came out to myself, my fears were all about my children. Will I stay in the closet? Will I keep it secret? Will I stay silent because of the children? How will they be? How will they be treated? How will the teachers, the childcare professionals, how will their friends and their friends' parents treat them? How will the community treat them? And that really was an ongoing issue until a friend of mine said to me one day, she said, how do you think that, because I had said, wax lyrical about, when they're adults, I'll explain it to them and I lead a separate life. I'll be my lesbian self when they're with their dad, and I'll be straight mom when I'm with my kids. And she said, how do you think they'll feel when you tell them at 18 or 20 or whenever you decide to tell them, and they look at you and they realize that you've lied to them throughout their formative years, that you were dishonest and that you weren't true to you? So what message is that giving them? That being something that's seen as other by society is wrong, that I couldn't be who I really am. So I stopped and I heard that and I thought, yeah, and as you know, kids from a very young age are really intuitive, and they knew there was something up. So I made the decision based on I wanted a relationship with my kids that was open and honest. And I wanted them to embrace diversity. But I have to say the knock-on effect for them for many years was fear of being homophobic bullied, fear of how they would be treated. They had to constantly choose to come out or not as well. And my 2 older ones remained very quiet, didn't want their friends knowing, didn't want the community knowing. Whereas my small guy was only 2.5, almost 3 when I came out. And it was a very different upbringing. Now, he was in the preschool that I used to run, and it was a very open preschool. He had a very different experience. And I remember my 9-year-old saying one day, I didn't have a partner at the time, and he said, at dinner, he said, Mom, because you haven't got a girlfriend now, does it mean you're not a lesbian? And I'd say he was saying, please. I thought, oh God. So I said, no, it doesn't work like that, Ryan. Your sexual identity is your sexual identity, whether you have a partner or not. And Shane, the young guy, was about 3.5 at the time, and he just lifted his head from his dinner and he said, Ryan, he said, it's okay for a girl to love a girl and a boy to love a boy. And what's the other one, Mom? And I thought, oh my God, he's gone the other way completely. And I said, a boy to love a girl and a girl to love a boy. And you went, yeah, that one. But for him, all of it was so normal, and I thought, my God, and I hate the word normal, but I thought the difference in that, here he was, and for him, it was perfectly normal for his dad to have a girlfriend and his mom to have a girlfriend. And I suppose that's where I feel, the early years, those formative years, and you as childcare professionals play such a role. When Louise said earlier today that the early years, really do form the bridge between family and society, and you can play such a positive role in that, in terms of working with LGBT families. Because it isn't just about the LGBT individuals, it's about the family themselves as well. We feel a very normal family. I don't think about my sexual orientation until I have to think about that exclusion and that discrimination. And is it safe to come out? Is it safe to be who I am? I never had to think about that. Do you have to think about that, whoever identifies as straight here? I suppose I often think we live in a presumed heterosexist world. We presume that people are straight just basically because of the society we live in. So, you're talking to your co-workers and one of your female co-workers said, hey, I met someone at the weekend, and you're all interested. Do you automatically think, or would you automatically say, what's his name? Would you ever say immediately, oh, what's his or her name? Can you imagine for a co-worker who is, who's afraid to come out, who is wondering how you'll be, how you'll treat her, how the parents will treat her, how she will be or he? Can you imagine if you'd said, oh, what's his or her name? Instantly, that gives the openness and the acceptance. So I suppose I'm not only talking about, there's all the levels. We talk about providing a safe, supportive, welcoming environment for children and the parents who identify as LGBT, but also your co-workers as well. It has to be at all levels before we can address the discrimination and the social exclusion. I suppose sexual orientation can really be a sensitive and challenging subject. Sexuality, sexual orientation isn't discussed freely and openly in Ireland. I'd like that to change. And what we find over in particular the last 5 years, is before that we would be knocking on doors, secondary schools mainly, it's come down to national schools now, we would have been knocking on the doors, because I work in a lesbian and bisexual women's resource centre now. So we'd be knocking on doors trying to provide awareness training, trying to encourage them to participate, whereas now we actually have schools calling us. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, we have preschools and creches calling us saying, will you come in and do training with the staff, which I think is a fantastic progression here. And I really look forward, and I suppose I would encourage that. Because we do have questions. We do, because sexual orientation isn't talked about. And we don't openly talk about people who are lesbian or gay, families who are lesbian or gay. It's a very silent and invisible. We don't have green horns, we don't have, purple skin. So we can come in and into a creche with our kids and you wouldn't know. And again, going back to the presumed heterosexuality, but that interlinked with the invisibility. So our children and ourselves have to choose whether it is a safe and welcoming and open environment where we can say this. So I suppose I would urge you to have, material, have a welcome day, and again, like Louise, I would say, not making a deal out of something, but you need to encourage that. Parents and families need to know that that's okay, and that you have that awareness as well. And I suppose in terms of, legal rights with regards to children, I'm sure you all here, we're fighting mad for civil marriage at the moment, marriage equality. And for me, one of the biggest things in that is children's rights. Because civil partnership, we were granted civil partnership last year. We weren't recognised as family. Our children have no rights in that. And we talk about non-biological parents having rights to their children, but it's about the children having rights to their biological parents as well. And that's a really important step for our children. They need that. I'd like to just talk to you about, or just tell you about a quote. My daughter is now 21. Quick quote, just to say to you, I suppose, I want you to get the impact of that it's about society and it's about how people use language and what people's thoughts are. Red FM were doing an article about a month, 6 weeks ago, and there was this guy irate on it, lesbian and gay people shouldn't be parents, it's not right, it's sick, yada, yada, yada. My daughter happened to be at home. Now my daughter growing up hated me at 13, 14, 15 because she wanted to be the same as Martina said, she wanted to fit in. She didn't want her mom being a lesbian. So anyway, we were listening in work to Red FM, and I came into my office sometime later and there was an email from Laura and she's like, Mom, please see the attached letter. I was listening to this and I got so annoyed at it. She said I had to send a letter in. Now the letter was too long to read. But it was amazing to see my 21-year-old daughter, who I can look back at 13 and 14, who wrote a letter saying, you know what, it's society's views that had her really mixed up, but she blamed me. And I just want to read a quick caption. You see, my issue wasn't with my mom's sexual preference. It was with how everyone else around me perceived it. That is what affected me the most. I felt alone. I began hating my mom, which in fact was so wrong. In hindsight, my mom being lesbian made no difference to our family lives. She was so supportive and always put us first. I know women in the lesbian community who are better moms than a lot of heterosexual moms. All I ask is for people to realise that their nasty comments, negative behaviour and small-mindedness is not only affecting LGBT people, but their families. So I think, looking at that and think, that's it really. It's how people view it. So I just finished by saying what I would recommend for childcare professionals, if I can find the page where I wrote it and got wet when we were outside taking photographs, is increase your awareness around the LGBT community and families in particular. Participate in training where possible. Get in touch with Link, the Cork Gay Project, Outhouse in Dublin, wherever you are. There is an LGBT organisation somewhere within your region. Positive reinforcement for children. Provide books and jigsaws. Get to know parents and carers and non-biological parents. Link in with LGBT organisations and encourage the child to share and acknowledge their family experience. And have John, of course, talk about non-gender as well, but I won't go there, I need to finish. Thank you very much.